Rock Solid Radio wants to thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions. Casey's is a premier garden center and gift shop located in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. They offer a wide selection of high-quality plants, landscaping materials, and home decor. They do amazing high-quality work and can help you transform your indoor and outdoor living spaces into something beautiful. So stop by Casey's Outdoor Solutions today and let them know you appreciate their support for Rock Solid Radio. Visit Casey's today at 21481 State Line Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Welcome to another episode of Rock Solid Radio. Hey, I'm Merrill Hutchinson, and boy, do we have a great show today.
Yes, we do.
Today, we are going to talk about how much Linda judges other people.
Wait a second. Whoa.
Yeah.
I don't think that was in the script. What are we talking about? What do you mean,
What
Linda?
script? When did we ever start doing a script?
What do you mean Linda needs to learn?
You know how you judge people.
Thanks for throwing me under the bus.
You know how you're always so critical of everybody.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's exactly what we're talking about today and what we're
Hang on. I got a little speck in my eye here.
Well, that's perfect segue into our topic today. And we are kidding, right? We're just joking.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're just joking.
Yeah.
So seriously, today's show we're talking about judging others. And is there ever a right way and a right time to do that, to judge others?
Yeah. Well, actually, no, there isn't. Or is there? So judgment, the term of judgment is really kind of the thing that gets us. Yeah. We're always going to have this deciphering off of what we take in with our senses, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, right? But what do we mean by judgment?
Yeah, well, we're going to be talking about that today. This week's show is really the first of our story series that we kind of launched last week, where Jesus tells a story with familiar subjects and familiar objects to teach an important moral lesson. And so we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take some of Jesus' stories and we're going to really apply them to what does that mean for us today. But before we do that, we better thank our sponsors.
Yeah, so we want to say thanks to Maxwell Construction for sponsoring our show today, and we just appreciate those guys. So guys, thank you for believing in our mission and what we do and coming alongside of us to help us out. We also would like to thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions as they have joined us here in the 2021 year. I know they are ramping up and getting ready for spring, even though we have got 10 inches of snow on the ground as we speak.
I'm channeling my snow mug today. If you're listening and not watching, I got my snow mug.
You get a snow mug, yeah.
Although the kids did go back to school today, so that's a thumbs up.
Yeah,
on that
yeah.
one.
So, but yeah, Casey's is gearing up for spring, as all of us are starting to think like, okay, it's not here yet, but it's coming.
It's coming.
Okay?
I'm ready.
So looking forward to that. We want to thank Casey's for helping us out and believing again in our mission here at Rock Solid Radio, along with Rock Solid Family. So guys, thank you. We appreciate all that you do for us and for our community.
You know, and if this is your very first time of tuning in, and maybe this topic is one that really strikes a nerve with you, first we just want to welcome you. We're glad that you're here. But if you've come with a really skeptical heart and mind right now, that's okay. We're glad that you're here, and we hope that you'll continue to listen, because I think we've got a really important show. Maybe you're tuning in, hon, because you're so sick of hypocrisy, right? That you've given up on Christians or church people or maybe even God. And we are so glad you've tuned in, because we think there's something really important here that we're going to talk about.
Well, this is probably the topic that we're going to talk about today is the one that actually causes more people to walk away from their church for sure, and even their faith. Yeah. And it's in large part because of how poorly we represent the leader of our faith, Jesus Christ. And so we are guilty of that. Yeah. And that's that judgment thing that we're going to talk about. So we do want you to tune in, to hang in there with us. We are all flawed people, but there is a message underneath the flaw that Christ wants us to get. And so we're going to try to get to that today. And hopefully we can help you put your judgment aside of this message and just hear what Christ is asking us to hear.
Yeah, so if you're out there and you've been hurt by people who words and actions have not matched, we're sorry. And we, as Christ followers, have done a lousy job at times representing him well. He is the one that is the judge and the jury. We are not. And so we apologize. But Rock Solid Radio, Hun, is part of a larger ministry we call Rock Solid Families. And we are a faith-based coaching organization located in West Harrison, Indiana. And so we believe that God's word has something to teach us and how to live our life and how to treat one another. So even if you don't believe in God or his son Jesus, who died and saved you, then came to die for you, then I hope you'll still keep tuning in, because I think there is still something important to learn here.
All right, before we go any farther.
Yeah.
All right.
What?
What's this about right here?
What do you got? It looks like a gigantic, whoa. They might not be watching, they might be listening.
It's a plank.
It's a big plank of wood.
Big plank
it looks like a big
of
paddle
wood.
or
Look
something.
at this. I mean, and this is with a small plank that I got out of the shop, okay?
Oh.
This is a small plank. So, Hun, tell us a little bit about what Matthew 7 talks about.
So the story Jesus tells in Matthew chapter 7 and Luke chapter 6 is just one of many that he taught his disciples and his followers in front of a crowd in this mountainside, which was called for many people the Sermon on the Mount. And we don't know if it was a matter of hours or even days that he did this, but he wasn't there just to give them more rules to follow, Hun. He was there to connect with them on a heart level, to try to help them understand the meaning behind the laws he had given them. And it was time for so many who claim to love God to stop living a life of hypocrisy and going through the motions. And I don't know if about you, but does that sound familiar? I mean, there's a lot of us, sometimes me, going around doing that. But Hun, why don't you read what the story says in chapter
in Matthew 7, we're talking about Jesus calling some people out, all right? And again, he's calling us out as well. And so he starts with, do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there is a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite. Oh, I'm choking up, so that must mean that one grabbed me. First, take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. You know, just for a reference point, I actually brought from my wood shop a speck of sawdust.
Are you sure it's not crumbs for a snack?
You can't see it, can you? You can't see it. It's so small. But look at this plank, and this plank speaks to the judgment of the judgment that we cast on others, and then look at what we have in ourselves.
You know, Hun, when I was doing some research for the show, some scholars kind of pointed out the fact that both the speck of sawdust and the plank of wood are both made out of the same material. And they said they don't believe that was just happenstance. I mean, he could have said a camel and a tree, or he could have, said a bird and a human. He didn't do that. He used two very similar materials, and scholars believe it's because it's easy for us to spot sin in someone else's life when we ourselves struggle with the same sin, but do maybe a greater degree. So yes, the wood of the sawdust and the wood of the plank are the same thing, but it's definitely more magnified in our own lives, which makes us more able to see people's sin in others. And so I thought that was interesting.
Well, yeah,
maybe that's what we struggle with ourselves.
Yeah. It's really so much of what our focus is on. And when we focus externally in the negative on other people, we fail to see the negativity in ourselves. And so sometimes, actually, even in the counseling world, one of our best tools that we can use is a mirror. It's a mirror. And so when we have couples talking back and forth and they're having a difficult time with each other, and not being disrespectful or sarcastic or anything, but to pull out the mirror and say, what do you see here? Yeah. And allow them to go, oh, I need to put the focus on what I'm doing. Yeah. All right, what my behavior is.
So, Hun, I'm guilty of this, and so here's confession time. Okay.
Ooh, hang on. I want
Actually,
drum roll.
I was going to say record this, but we are recording this. I did this to you the other day. And I wanted to publicly apologize to you and to those that are listening
Do
out
I know
there.
that you did this? Did you do this and I didn't even know you did it?
No, you knew because you kind of pointed it out to me, and I caught you caught me in it. And we were coming out of a session with a couple at our office, and I was sitting there and ready to go into a session, and you asked them a question that made me think that you had not filled out all that initial paperwork.
The stuff I love.
That you love
Yeah,
so
I love
much.
the paperwork.
Okay, all of
Yeah.
that, coaching agreement and informed consent and all that stuff. And so, and we both have dropped the ball in that before. But you asked a question that made me think that maybe you hadn't. So I asked, did you fill the paperwork out with them? And you had. But that was
you caught me on one time that I did.
but that was wrong of me. It looked like I was throwing you under the bus, and I was simply trying to, catch them before they walked out the door if we needed that information. But I know that it didn't come out kind, and it could have been like calling you out. And I'm sorry for that. I should not have done that in front of other people.
And again, I mean, it's, part of it is helping run the business. But the longer you get married, the more sensitive you get to the tone. You understand the tone of things. And so I think I'm hypersensitive to the tone. And when I hear you say, did you fill out the paperwork? That is like, this is a questionable thing whether I get it done. And so it's the tone and stuff. And again, hon, I accept your apology for that, but man, I have so many against you that I struggle with, that I have
So do you want to confess? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'd rather go on with the rest of the show.
No, don't you think? I mean, those that are listening, I think they would like to know. I mean, if there's anything.
Yeah. So part of, I think, one of my confessions is probably disregarding your heart. Way more often than I know you appreciate, and that is you are a heartfelt person. You do so many things with your heart, whether it's raising our kids or the business or whatever, and you do it with your heart. And I do it more with my head in the sense of, like we even had a conversation the other night about how couples and their cases and stuff really can get to you, and I can be like,
I take it home more
well,
than
I
you
don't
do.
own that. I don't own that,
Yeah.
And because I kind of come off like you need to do it like I do, like because I don't own that, I'm really discrediting what you bring to our work, to our family. We need your heart. I need your heart because it also helps me go, I need to do a better job of balancing. And it's not like one way or the other is right or wrong. It's keeping that balance.
Right.
And sometimes when we get into our own way, we just kind of want to shut the other person down. And that's how sometimes my tone comes across, you're overthinking this or you're doing it, versus just kind of listening to you and helping work through it as a team.
So what I think we're both saying is worry about your own plank first. It helps us see things clear with a clear and humble heart. I love this phrase, hon. Forgiven people should be forgiving people. So you and I both have been forgiven by our Lord Jesus Christ, who died in our place and knew that we fell short. And the fact that he still forgives us should turn us into forgiving people. So forgiven people should be forgiving people. James 2:12 and 13, hon, it tells us that mercy triumphs over judgment. So it's a matter of leading with mercy first. Before you confront any kind of sin or call anybody out.
Yeah, this is that thing of when we do, and we are called to call people out, right?
In certain instances, which we're going to get to.
Right. So we are called, but the idea that we do it with the love and the mercy side of it versus the condemnation and the judgment side of it. Because kind of at the end of the day, and you and I know this in the work that we do, at the end of the day, if we burn the relationship, if we destroy the relationship, then we really lose chances to talk into their life, to be helpful, to maybe lead them to Christ. And so sometimes that harshness comes across to the point where people actually have to set up a boundary against you because you intrude way too harshly on them, and they're like, you know what?
Yeah.
Talk to the hand. I really don't need anything to do with you.
And you're assuming there is a relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, how many of us go out and pass judgment or confront sin with people we have no relationship with? It's a guy on the street. It's a cashier at the store. I mean, we push on things that are really not our job. And so we have to have a relationship with this person first. You know, the old adage, hon, I love, is that rules without relationship equal rebellion. Mm-hmm. And so if you're kind of just coming down on people with what's right and what's wrong, and you have no relationship with that person, it's just going to push them away and cause them to react and rebel. So rules without relationship equal rebellion. And I truly believe that.
Well, hon, the cool thing about that, and especially whether it's in your marriage or in the parenting, I think about that even from a coaching perspective with athletics. If you have a coach who is showing that they love their players, they lean into them, they want the best for them, they have an interest even in just their overall wellness, those kind of things. And then that coach comes down hard on a kid, maybe for a mistake made on the field or whatever. That coach is more, or that athlete is much more willing to listen, because he showed that he cares when the emotions are not flying. And so that's the thing that makes that kid go, oh, this is coach talking, I'm going to listen.
Right.
And that's, so with our kids, you know, sometimes when parents come to us, hon, with parenting situations, they will say, you know, I feel like I'm just always disciplining the kids. And so we'll be bringing up discipline, behavior plans and things like that. And my point to them is, yeah, if all we're doing in our home is discipline, then it's going to run a very short life. Yeah. So when do I build relationship? And so this is when things are going well. I talk about this is our Walmart drive. You know, hey, when your kid's in the car with you and you're just driving to Walmart, this is where you have fun conversation, where you have loving conversation, when you're just pouring into each other, all right? Yeah. And you're just showing them that you care, that you care, that you care.
Is it always Walmart?
No, I don't even like going there.
I was going to say, you don't like going to Walmart.
No, but, you know, it's just the example. Yeah. And so then the idea, like, okay, so my kid is really understanding that I do care. And maybe the next day something goes wrong and I have to come down on him. Yeah. I now have permission in their mind to come down on them with a strong but positive authority. So different than if I'm always in the discipline mode. And so it's that important thing that we have to earn the right to speak into people's lives. And if you don't, whether you're a parent, whether it's a couple thing, if we're constantly in the negative, if we're constantly in the judgment phase, eventually out of their own survivalship, they're going to harden themselves to you because they can't take getting beat up by this message.
Yeah, because it's all it is about criticism and judgment. And you mentioned the word care, hon, and that reminds me of another old adage. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I'm sure you've heard that before, but it's one of my favorites. You know, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so you can't just keep firing off all of these values and rules and judgments on people. You're just going to shut them down, and you're going to ruin any kind of relationship if you have it. You know, there is a place and a time, and we're going to talk about that in our challenge. But please understand, we're not saying you never confront sin. Okay, but we are saying that we need to work on the relationship first, so we earn the right to be heard.
Yeah. So, hon, let's talk about how we do confront. Whether we confront in the relationship, whether we confront our kids, whether we're confronting somebody at the workplace. I think one of the very first things that we really have to take some time to think about and just have an assessment on is, what is our intention? What is our heart in doing this? Yep. Because so often, the reason why I want to point out somebody's wrong is really to put them down. right? It's really we see this with our kids all the time,
yeah.
right? Like
They come home
they
from
can't
school
wait to bicker with each other. And as soon as one of them makes a mistake, everybody wants to key up on that mistake as if they are mistake free.
Right.
And why? Because they want to see them take a hit. They want to see them go down.
I thought you were going to talk about the kids who come home with all of these nasty things that people have said to them. And our kids are like owning all that and thinking like that's them and that's their. Sometimes you have to really look at, okay, who is that saying that? And what's going on in their life? Because a lot of times they're just pointing out their own insecurities and their own weaknesses because that's easier to put you down to do that.
Yeah, Psalm 139, 23 to 24 says, Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there's any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. That's what God calls us to do, guys, first. I mean, man, I see this in leadership position. I see this in our marriage, like just trying to break somebody down without trying to pull them back up is going to break the relationship.
Yeah. Do you notice how, and again, that's Psalm 139, 23 and 24. Do you realize how many times that the psalmist said, me, search me, O God, and know my anxious heart, and test me and my anxious thoughts, see if there's any offensive way in me. And so the idea is that you're looking within. The old thing. I'm all about old adages today.
You are. This is like your fifth adage.
Well, seriously, these are things that come out of my mind in my voice all the time. The old, and Mr. Frank always says this, when you point one finger at you, the other four are pointing back at me.
Three.
I was going to say this. It's really, somebody corrected him on that the other day. The thumb doesn't count.
Yeah.
Is that the thing? But, the idea is that stop pointing fingers and take a look at your own heart. So that's the very first step you got to do. If you see someone else in a sinful, serious issue that you need to address.
Yeah. The next thing to think about is before you even go to this other person, actually think about how you're handling the type of sin that they're handling. In other words, maybe it's gossip or whatever that you're getting ready to call this person out. How do you actually handle it? What's that look like in your eye? Is this the plank in your eye that you're even worse at that particular sin than they are? We had the conversation the other day, and I can just confess this. We were talking about our kids and their cell phone use. And I'm convicted in that this is a plank in our eye as well. I mean, we talk about what our kids do with cell phones, and we look at each other, and our head is in the cell phone equally as much, and we just qualify it and call it work. And so, not that we don't address the kids in their cell phone, but it makes me have to analyze, okay, wait, what is my example? Right. What am I doing? Because that means there's work on my part too.
Right. But Hun, you mentioned about, confessing the sin of yourself that's similar to the person. But I would say it's any sin, any unconfessed sin. We need to get all those planks out of our eyes because people aren't going to listen to us when we are being hypocrites in our own way with maybe different things. For instance, if you're trying to correct your son or daughter for cheating on a test or plagiarizing in an English class, let's say, but you cheat on your taxes or you lie to your boss, then it's kind of one of those things where don't be pointing fingers at me, Dad, because or maybe you're cheating on your wife or whatever. So there's things that maybe are other sins in different ways, but you still need to look and say, am I being a hypocrite here by pointing someone else out when I've got my own issues?
Right. And I think when you point out, it's important that you make sure that whoever you're pointing out to, the thing that you're going to challenge, that you recognize where your challenge is. You don't excuse where you're at. It doesn't give you permission to speak. It gives you the opportunity to have an association with them. Like, hey, I'm struggling with this as well.
Yes.
And a lot of times, even like with our kids, and we've done this before with cell phones and the Lenten season, like we're talking about, well, what are you going to do to kind of help remind yourself of Christ during this time? And the idea that you, instead of pointing out each other whether it's a good thing or bad thing that they're going to do, hey, how about, we're all struggling with this. Let's all work on this together.
Yeah, for sure. So once you really have searched your own heart and after you've confessed your own sins and really got the plank out of your own eye, then it's time to go to the person that maybe you've hurt or wronged and make amends if at all possible. That helps. So many times we've said before, even if you feel like they were in 95% of the wrong and you just own your 5%. Take that 5%. Now, we don't want you to go, hey, you're 95% and I'm only 5. Like, that doesn't get you anywhere.
You're mostly wrong.
Yeah, you're mostly wrong. I'm just a little wrong. No, you own what you're wrong in. You own what you've done wrong. And then that really starts to break down the defenses with the person that you're trying to speak to, maybe confront something in. And that really will help their hearts and minds to be a little bit more open about what you're about to say.
Beware that you do not control how they will receive the message.
Yes.
All right. Everybody is, whether, especially when sin is being called out,
Nobody
sin
likes
has
that.
to be owned. And so you can't make somebody own that, especially an adult. And so when you deliver this, don't expect that it's always going to be embraced with open arms. Thank you for telling me that. Now I'm
feel so
finally
much better now.
sin-free. And it might be more like, what are you talking about? And so understand.
You have a lot of room to talk.
Yeah, if defensiveness starts to rise up, it is not time for you to get defensive with them.
Right.
This is actually the opportunity that you show Christ-like. This is actually the opportunity that you don't get into debating, you don't get into the, pointing the finger. Instead, you just stay calm and you just take what they have to say. All right.
Yeah.
Your gentleness will keep their defenses on the low and hopefully diffuse them. And so I think this is so important because, we point things out to our kids all the time, right? And especially we have one in the house, our little guy, man, as soon as you point out his wrong, his fists come up like and so you can point out the wrong and then you kind of have to back off.
Yeah.
Because he's turned you off, right? And ultimately, we want to see something move in a better, positive direction.
I was just recently talking to a couple about this. When you see the fire kind of burning and things are not good, the last thing you want to do is throw accelerant on it. Your job is to find a way to throw water on it. And that person might be, like you said, coming out with fists. And that's the time where you just want to kill them with kindness and take a time out and to kind of release some of the tension that's in the room. The more critical you are towards someone else's sin, the more blinded you are to yours. That is so important to remember. So if you come off defensive, if you come off bitey and critical, then there's more blind spots with you than you realize.
Yeah. So again, this kind of circles back around to the key here is the relationship.
Yes.
All right. If this is somebody you're trying to do life with, the key is the relationship. The key is, the rules without relationships equals rebellion. And so if I am constantly putting down the rule and I'm defending the rule, and that's my ploy here in life, I'm going to get a rebellious kid. And this is no guarantee that you're not going to get a rebellious kid, because like we said, we can't really, this thing called free will says they have the opportunity to make a choice how they're going to handle things. But I, especially as the believer and hopefully maturing in my faith, have to go, okay, I am not going to burn this relationship. I'm going to try to take a step back. I'm going to put, like we always say, as an adult, you need to put yourself in timeout.
So, after you take those steps of searching your heart and really acknowledging your own plank and confessing that and making amends when you can, even after that, then when you see someone else really heading down for that train wreck or that going over the cliff, out of love, you got to search your heart and decide, okay, why do I want to confront this sin? What is it going on that really I'm concerned about? And if you really believe that there needs to be that confrontation or that conversation, then we ask that you do what Christ asks us to do. And that is to speak the truth in love, but do it with gentleness and respect. And man, that just comes off so different than a critical, judgmental spirit. So speaking the truth in love, but do it with gentleness and respect.
Yeah. Think about that. If you're actually going to try to do that, that is not something that is done impulsively, off the cuff.
Yeah.
You might think...
Or publicly, I would say, too.
Oh, yeah. That public humiliation does not work in the case of trying to keep the relationship. I'm not saying that publicly humiliating him doesn't always stop a behavior. It could stop a bad behavior, but it doesn't do much to keep the relationship. Okay,
Yeah.
and so assessing all of those things is extremely important. And at the end of the day, here we always look at what was Christ always trying to do. He was trying to keep people listening to him. All right, he was trying to keep that relationship because ultimately he was the way, the truth, and the life. He wanted to show them that, and it was very, especially in the moment, it was very confusing to people, especially these people in power, authority. One of the hardest people to call out are people who have an inflated sense of authority.
Yeah.
Whether it's their position, their job title, whatever it is, to call that person out is very difficult. And so Christ knew that calling out people like the Pharisees was going to be very hard. But if you do it in truth, you have a better chance of getting them to listen.
And we're not going to get this right. Can I just tell you, I've blown it so many times, I can't even count. I come out with guns a-blazing and and like you said, sometimes my heart just leads and it gets me in trouble and it comes off maybe too hard, too harsh, too fast, and I get it wrong. So the question at the top of the show, really, that we haven't answered yet, is there ever a time when judging others is okay? And that's really what we're here to talk about. Is it ever okay to judge someone else? So please hear our hearts, okay? Everything that we just said, there will be times where you are going to need to call and confront someone in their sin. There are going to be those times. We're called to do that, whether it be as a parent, whether it be as a spouse, whether it be as a boss, somebody in authority like a pastor or counselor. We're going to be called to do that, but ultimately, it's not to be done in criticism or judgment. Ultimately, we are not the judge, okay? And so we always really need to search our heart. Is it done out of love and care and concern for you? If that's the way it's done, there is a time and a place for that. But the ultimate judgment is God's.
So this gets us to if I'm going to judge in the here and now, in other words, in this life, my purpose in that judgment is actually for betterment, for a greater opportunity to help somebody get to past the eternal judgment. And so the thing that we have to be careful with is we do not carry the ability to run an eternal judgment on someone's life. You're going to hell because, all right?
Yeah, that's never
our
call.
Yeah, that is not our call. And that's where I think we can get very into the self-righteousness of our faith. I think this is where we've gotten into very sticky territory with a lot of non-believers because they have felt like, well, you believe I'm going to hell.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you've told me that before.
Yeah. I'll tell you where to go.
That goes really well.
So that whole idea is, okay, judging in the moment on a behavior is almost more like what a coach is calling out the player who maybe needs to clean up a certain play that they're doing or a skill that they're not doing as well. That is ultimately to win the game. They're trying to win the game.
Better the player.
So yeah, we're gonna call you out in that short term situation. But what we have to be careful on is nobody here on this current earth is going to judge us to heaven or hell. And you cannot put yourself out there like that. And we get into that like, well, he goes to the bar and he drinks, he's living a life that's going to go send him to hell. That sort of talk does nothing to keep somebody in the game or keep the relationship.
Exactly. Yeah. So if they reject the truth, spoken in love, that you're trying to share with them about something that you see that's going to harm them down the road, then the Bible tells us to dust the feet off and move on to someone who will listen. Leave the final call to God. It's not, he's God, we're not. And so it is tough. We've been in this situation where there's been people we have loved. We felt like we have shared truth and love, and they've rejected that. And we have to just trust God that he's got a plan, maybe someone else in his life, but he's also ultimately given us this free will to choose or reject, to accept him or reject him.
And can I even say, though, that even when somebody has rejected you or your message and you have to wipe the sand from your feet and you have to walk away, that does not even judge them to hell, okay? No. Because you may have very well planted the seed.
Sure.
for the next person to come, and maybe the next person, the dust can stay on their feet a little longer.
Yeah.
Maybe the next person will start to be able to open them up and have the conversation more. So,
or maybe you think you've gotten the plank out of your own eye, but you really haven't. And so down the road, maybe you'll realize that maybe you weren't the right person, you weren't the right time to speak that truth into them. Because remember, our job is to help both of us to see clearer and to live a life that honors him. So, hopefully sometimes we get that backwards and we're more worried about the speck than our own plank. Step back and focus on your planks.
Ew.
You didn't like that.
I didn't like the way you ended that one. Yeah.
No.
All right. So very good stuff. That's why surrounding all of this, we need God's grace. And God's grace is what gives us the second chance to keep playing and to come back. And so in your relationship, when one of you messes it up or comes off judgmental, we have to give forgiveness and grace to keep on coming back.
Triumphs judgment.
Overall.
Yeah.
Okay. So we want to thank you guys for listening to Rock Solid Radio. We want to thank our sponsors, Maxwell Construction and Casey Outdoor Solutions, for continuing to come alongside of us. Also, we are now on YouTube. If you are watching this on YouTube, please do us a favor and subscribe to that channel. Between subscriptions and 5-star ratings, those are the things that elevate the search engines to lead people to our message. And our message is only as good as you guys believe it is. And we also would like to hear from you. We don't claim to have it all right here. And if you hear something that is helpful, tell us. We want to keep going down that road. If you hear something that is a contradiction or something that you don't agree with or whatever, we're not here to debate right and wrong. We're here to listen and to try to figure out, okay, well, what's the best way that we can come together and help more people better themselves through God's word.
Yeah. So thank you so much for listening to Rock Solid Radio, building a stronger community, one family at a time. Make it a great day. Get that plank out.
I was going to bring a railroad tie in. But
couldn't carry it.
No, I couldn't. It was because it was my own. All right. We're done. We're done. Thank you. Love you.
Rock Solid Radio wants to thank Maxwell Construction, who has been our sponsor since the very beginning. For over 30 years, Maxwell has delivered the highest quality projects by holding to their core values of customer satisfaction, positive attitude, respect, and excellence. So if you have any kind of commercial construction need, give Maxwell Construction a call today at 812-537-2200.